July 1947. New Mexico desert. A rancher's ordinary night becomes the beginning of America's greatest mystery. A violent sound splits the darkness. Not thunder, something else. The next morning, William Wayne Brazel walks his land. The Foster Ranch stretches endless. He stops. The ground before him is wrong. Strange metal scattered across the field. Lightweight, thin, unlike anything manufactured by human hands. Brazel picks up a piece. He crumples it. When released, it unfolds itself. No wrinkles remain. He attempts to cut it. His knife slides off uselessly. Fire? It will not burn. By July 4th weekend, Brazel confides in neighbors. Word spreads through Roswell County. The nation is primed for the unexplained. Kenneth Arnold saw something weeks earlier. 5 flying discs over Washington state. The term flying saucer ignites public imagination. Radio broadcasts amplify the mystery. Americans wonder, are we being watched? Cold War paranoia saturates the nation. Atomic bombs, Soviet threat, communist infiltration rumors. The climate is one of fear. Into this atmosphere of unease, Brazel's discovery lands. The Roswell sheriff becomes involved. Federal interest escalates rapidly. By July 7th, the Roswell Army Airfield enters the picture. Major Jesse Marcel arrives at the ranch. Marcel examines the debris himself. He is experienced. He has never seen anything like this. The I-beams trouble him most. They bear symbols, hieroglyphic-like markings. No known industrial purpose. July 8th, dawn. The Roswell Army Airfield makes an announcement that will alter history. A press release is issued. Flying disc captured. The military confirms the impossible. The nation erupts. Newspapers run banner headlines. Radio stations broadcast the extraordinary claim continuously. But within hours, the narrative shifts. The military changes its story. It was merely a weather balloon. A weather balloon. The debris? Wreckage from a classified surveillance project. The mystery, they claim, is solved, but witnesses remember what they saw. Marcel, Brazel, others, the material, the symbols. The truth refuses to be contained. July 1947. The Roswell Incident closes, or does it? The questions linger across decades, unanswered. July 8th, 1947. A press release changes everything. Then, just hours later, it is retracted. The contradiction between these two official statements becomes the foundation of a mystery that refuses to die. At 5:26 p.m. on that July evening, the Roswell Army Airfield's public information officer, First Lieutenant Walter Hart, sits down to compose words that will ripple across America. The official statement reads, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality today." The press release continues with measured official language. The intelligence office of the 509th Bombardment Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc. Those words, disc, possession, fortunate, ignite newsrooms across the country. By evening, the story spreads through wire services. The headline screams, "Army Air Forces capture flying disc on ranch in Roswell region." Newspapers from coast to coast run the story. The San Francisco Chronicle, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune all report the same astonishing claim: an actual flying disc recovered by the United States military. Not speculation, official fact. But the story has barely begun circulating when the military machine shifts into reverse. At Fort Worth Army Airfield, 200 miles away, Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who handled the recovery, receives new orders. He must submit to photographs. The photographs are damning in their casualness. Major Marcel holds pieces of metallic debris, some crinkled, some flat. He poses for the camera without expression. These images will become iconic. The smoking gun of the cover-up, captured in the moment of reversal. Then comes the statement that erases everything. General Roger Ramey, commanding officer of Fort Worth, releases his own press statement. The flying disc, he announces, is nothing more than a weather balloon, a simple, domestic weather observation device. The exact reversal is striking. Within hours of Roswell's disk statement, General Ramey declares, "These fragments were the remnants of a high-altitude weather balloon and a radar reflector which had fallen on a nearby ranch." The newspapers scrambled to update their stories. By July 9th, the narrative has completely inverted. Ramey empties Roswell saucer, headlines read. The flying disc becomes a weather balloon. Mystery becomes mundane explanation, but contradictions immediately surface. Major Jesse Marcel, the man whose photographs now accompany the weather balloon explanation, will later insist he knew exactly what he held. His own words, decades later, plant seeds of permanent doubt. Marcel stated in later interviews, "I was there. I know what I saw and what I handled. It was not a balloon." The photograph of him holding debris, which was meant to support the weather balloon story, became evidence of something else entirely. The whiplash between the two statements creates an epistemological problem. If the military could be wrong the first time about possessing a disc, could they be wrong the second time? The contradiction becomes the question itself. What drives institutional reversals of this magnitude within hours? The speed itself becomes suspicious. Normal military procedure would demand verification, consultation, review. Instead, declaration, retraction, replacement narrative, all within a single news cycle. The press release they took back remains the document that matters most, not because it was true, but because its reversal, so swift, so complete, so decisive, suggests that something extraordinary required extraordinary containment. The truth, perhaps, required silencing. Within hours of the Roswell incident, a deafening silence fell. Official statements reversed. Witnesses vanished. The truth, it seemed, had been buried in the desert. Mac Brazel, the rancher who discovered the debris field, was taken into military custody. What happened during those crucial hours remains officially unknown. When Brazel emerged, his story had changed dramatically. The metallic debris, the strange materials, the inexplicable craft. Now, it was simply a weather balloon, he claimed. Military personnel who handled the materials reported extraordinary orders. Absolute secrecy, under threat of severe consequences. Decades would pass before some dared speak. Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who witnessed the debris firsthand, kept silent for 30 years. The pressure to conform, to forget, had been immense. By the 1950s, the Roswell story had nearly vanished from public consciousness. The Cold War had begun in earnest. Fear and paranoia gripped the nation. The government's narrative, a simple weather balloon, faced no serious challenge. The absence of official investigation became its own form of proof. For nearly 3 decades, silence reigned. Those who knew the truth remained bound by fear, secrecy agreements, or the simple impossibility of being believed. Then, in 1978, Jesse Marcel finally broke his silence. At 63 years old, he granted his first major interview, claiming the weather balloon story was a deliberate cover-up. Marcel's testimony reignited what had been extinguished: public curiosity, investigative journalism, and the fundamental question, what were the authorities hiding? The decades of silence had created a dangerous vacuum. Without official transparency, speculation filled the void. Conspiracy theories flourished where facts had been suppressed. What the Cold War had buried, freedom of information and courageous witnesses, would slowly exhume. The silence, once absolute, had finally been broken. In 1994, nearly 50 years after Roswell, the United States Air Force released a report that promised to end the mystery forever. The debris found near Corona, New Mexico, they claimed, belonged to Project Mogul, a classified program so secret that even military officers didn't know its name in 1947. Project Mogul was designed to detect Soviet atomic bomb tests using high-altitude balloon arrays equipped with sensitive acoustic sensors, a technological marvel kept hidden from the entire world. The Air Force explained that the strange metallic debris, the wooden beams and the rubber material were all components of Mogul balloons, not from any spacecraft. This revelation seemed to answer everything. But it raised an even more troubling question. Why had the government waited 47 years to tell the truth? The answer lay in Cold War paranoia. In 1947, America was terrified of Soviet espionage. Admitting that they'd deployed classified surveillance balloons over New Mexico was unthinkable. A rancher finding debris from an advanced American surveillance program was a national security nightmare. Better to deny everything. Better to call it a weather balloon. The government's silence wasn't proof of a cover-up about aliens. It was proof of a cover-up about classified American technology, which, paradoxically, made the truth harder to believe. Roswell officer William Blanchard, who signed the original flying disc press release, later admitted the confusion stemmed from genuine misidentification, not conspiracy. Yet the 1994 Air Force report itself contained inconsistencies that fueled skepticism. How could experienced military men mistake a balloon array for a flying disc? Some former Roswell personnel refused to accept the explanation. Major Jesse Marcel, who first examined the debris, insisted until his death that Mogul couldn't account for what he'd touched. The Mogul explanation was plausible, documented, and ultimately classified, but it lacked the certainty that decades of speculation had created. The public had chosen their narrative long ago. Project Mogul was real. Its balloons did carry sensitive equipment. Its existence was classified until 1994. Yet millions believed something else had landed that night. The tension between classified reality and public belief became the true enigma of Roswell. Not what fell from the sky, but why America's secret couldn't satisfy humanity's need for mystery. By revealing Project Mogul, the government solved the Roswell mystery while deepening it. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, because it was kept secret for reasons we couldn't imagine. In 1995, a grainy film emerged that would reignite Roswell's most sensational claim, the autopsy of an alien corpse. For decades, whispers persisted of recovered bodies, but were they extraterrestrial visitors or something far more terrestrial? The 1995 autopsy footage claimed to show the dissection of an alien being recovered from the New Mexico desert. It aired on television and spread through underground networks like wildfire. The footage showed a small, frail humanoid with an oversized head, elongated limbs, and a peculiar skeletal structure. Millions watched in shock and fascination. Believers saw undeniable proof of extraterrestrial life. Skeptics immediately smelled deception, but the emotional impact was undeniable. The footage had triggered global curiosity. For years, the footage's origin remained murky. Then, in 1997, the Air Force made a bold move. They officially closed the Roswell case. Their explanation was stunning in its simplicity. Those bodies, not aliens, they were crash test dummies from the 1950s, part of high-altitude balloon experiments called Project Mogul. Project Mogul was classified and designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests using high-altitude balloons. The dummies tested equipment in extreme conditions. The Air Force presented photographs of these dummies. Their elongated heads, thin limbs, and skeletal appearance bore uncanny resemblance to descriptions from 1947. But here's where the narrative fractured. The bodies witnesses described in 1947 appeared decades before these dummies were deployed. The timeline didn't align. Critics pounced. If these dummies caused the 1947 confusion, how could witnesses describe them in detail years before the official explanation existed? Furthermore, Project Mogul remained classified until the 1990s. How could it explain sightings from 1947 if nobody knew the project existed? The autopsy film itself posed another problem. In 2006, the filmmaker admitted it was a reconstruction, but claimed he used real footage as reference material. He never revealed who provided that supposed reference material or where it originated. The chain of custody for the original footage remained broken, yet the government's explanation while logically sound, raised as many questions as it answered. Why the decades of silence about Project Mogul? Why did official accounts shift multiple times from weather balloon to debris field to classified balloon project? Each revision fueled conspiracy theories. The body question remains uniquely divisive. Believers argue the dummy explanation was retrofitted to a mystery that had already been solved by witnesses. Skeptics counter that eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, especially across 70 years and countless retellings that accumulated embellishment and misinformation. The autopsy hoax itself became a watershed moment. It demonstrated how easily sensational claims could capture global attention, regardless of veracity. By 2021, the autopsy filmmaker's identity was revealed as Ray Santilli, a British television producer. He maintained elements were authentic, but offered no proof. The body's question ultimately reveals Roswell's core paradox. As official explanations became more detailed, public trust paradoxically declined. Were the original witnesses describing dummies they couldn't have known about? Or was the dummy explanation a convenient cover for something else entirely? The debate remains unsettled. In 1955, the CIA made a decision that would reshape American intelligence forever. A remote, dry lakebed in Nevada would become ground zero for Cold War espionage. CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized the construction of a secret airfield, location classified, purpose hidden. The site sat just 80 miles northwest of the Nevada test site, where atomic bombs detonated regularly. Perfect cover. Lockheed's Skunk Works division had designed the U-2 spy plane, a revolutionary aircraft capable of photographing Soviet territory from impossible altitudes. The U-2 could fly at 70,000 feet, higher than any Soviet interceptor, but it needed a test base away from prying eyes. Groom Lake offered everything: isolation, existing infrastructure from nuclear testing programs, and proximity to the Soviet threat monitoring network. By 1955, construction crews descended on the lakebed. They built hangars, runways, and support facilities, all under absolute secrecy. Workers signed non-disclosure agreements. Satellite imagery was classified. Even the facility's existence was denied by government officials. The remote location earned a simple designation: Area 51. It appeared on maps only as an unmarked grid reference within the larger Nevada test and training range. The name reflected bureaucratic logic. The Nevada test site contained multiple administrative zones, numbered sequentially. Area 51 was simply geographic designation, nothing more. But this administrative label would acquire legendary status. What happened inside Area 51 would fuel decades of speculation and conspiracy theory. The U-2 program represented Cold War technological dominance. American intelligence needed photographic proof of Soviet military capabilities. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev boasted about advanced missile systems. American officials needed verification. Human intelligence wasn't sufficient anymore. The U-2 could fly undetected, or so the CIA believed. Its unique design and extreme altitude seemed to offer perfect security. Groom Lake's isolation made it ideal for test flights. Pilots could practice reconnaissance runs over simulated Soviet terrain without fear of detection. The test flights required extreme secrecy. Sightings were inevitable. Workers, ranchers, and pilots all reported unusual aircraft in Nevada skies. These sightings would later fuel UFO theories. But in 1955, the reality was purely terrestrial: advanced American spy plane technology. Allen Dulles understood the propaganda value of secrecy. By denying the U-2's existence, the CIA added layers of mystery to American capabilities. Groom Lake became the epicenter of American aerial reconnaissance innovation. What occurred within its boundaries remained classified for decades. The base expanded throughout the late 1950s. Additional hangars, maintenance facilities, and housing for specialized personnel were constructed incrementally. Security measures were extraordinary. Perimeter fencing, armed guards, and air defense systems protected the classified work inside. Only cleared personnel could access the facility. Backgrounds were investigated extensively. Discretion was not optional. It was mandatory. The U-2 program remained operational through the late 1950s. Groom Lake served as the primary testing and training facility for pilots. Pilots trained for high-altitude reconnaissance missions. They practiced evasive maneuvers, camera operation, and emergency procedures in complete isolation. The facility's existence remained officially denied until 2013. For nearly 6 decades, Area 51 was simply a blank spot on Nevada's geography, yet the secrecy paradoxically generated legend. What the government refused to acknowledge became the subject of endless speculation and myth. Area 51 transformed from administrative designation into cultural phenomenon. The hidden base became a symbol of government secrecy itself. By the early 1960s, Groom Lake had established itself as America's premier testing facility for advanced aircraft and reconnaissance technology. The CIA's decision to locate the U-2 program in the Nevada desert proved strategically sound. Isolation ensured security. Remoteness prevented espionage. Groom Lake became a classified fortress. What the American public knew about Area 51 came from rumors, speculation, and declassified leaks. The base's true purpose, reconnaissance aircraft development, remained hidden beneath layers of classification and official denial for generations. Area 51 exemplified Cold War paranoia and technological ambition. In the Nevada desert, America built its most secret laboratory. For decades, Americans reported seeing impossible flying objects in the night sky. The government knew the truth all along. In 1955, the CIA began flying the U-2 spy plane at altitudes no aircraft had reached before. 60,000 feet above Earth, the U-2 could photograph Soviet missile sites from heights where enemies couldn't detect it. A revolutionary surveillance weapon. But there was a problem. Pilots flying at 35,000 feet reported seeing the U-2 overhead. They saw something they couldn't explain. The CIA made a remarkable admission years later. Their own classified documents revealed the truth. U-2 sightings accounted for more than half of all UFO reports in the 1950s. Commercial pilots saw a silver aircraft catching sunlight at impossible altitudes. Their brains couldn't process what they witnessed. The military aircraft defied every known aviation capability. Flying at 70,000 feet, the U-2 could still be seen from the ground on clear days. Its titanium skin reflected sunlight like a mirror. Witnesses described seeing a craft moving impossibly fast, changing direction without banking. They saw nothing that matched any aircraft in existence at the time. The CIA faced a dilemma. They couldn't explain these sightings without revealing their most classified program. So they did something brilliant. They let people believe in UFOs. UFO reports became perfect cover. The more Americans blamed extraterrestrials, the less they suspected Soviet surveillance aircraft overhead. The lie protected the secret. Throughout the 1960s, the problem only intensified. The U-2's successor, the A-12 Oxcart, flew at 90,000 feet. It was even faster, even more silent, even more alien-looking. Pilots called it a flying black triangle. Its delta wing configuration resembled nothing in commercial aviation. UFO reports skyrocketed again in areas beneath its flight path. The government never officially connected these sightings to their spy planes. Instead, they funded UFO research programs and encouraged the narrative of extraterrestrial visitors. Project Blue Book, established in 1952, investigated UFO reports. Yet the most significant sightings were never explained. The military knew why. They invented the mystery. Declassified documents from 2013 proved what skeptics had always suspected. The CIA admitted they deliberately misled the public about UFOs to protect classified aviation programs. The genius of this deception was its elegance. By letting people believe in UFOs, the government eliminated skeptics, Who would dare question an extraterrestrial explanation? Witnesses weren't lying. They saw something impossible. They just didn't know it was made on Earth by human engineers with access to Cold War technology and unlimited budgets. The U-2 program cost $20 million in the 1950s. The A-12 ox cart cost nearly $100 million. These were investments in perception management as much as surveillance. Even today, UFO sightings cluster over restricted military airspace. The pattern is unmistakable to those who know where to look. The government still uses the strategy. The CIA's admission changed nothing. Most people still believe in UFOs. The mythology, once planted, became more powerful than the truth behind it. This is the real mystery. Not whether aliens visit Earth, but how a government successfully convinced an entire nation to believe an elaborate fiction. The U-2 and A-12 were technological miracles, yet they flew in darkness, hidden beneath the mythology of extraterrestrials. The greatest deception operated in plain sight, disguised as wonder. In 1989, one man stepped into the spotlight with a claim that would reshape American mythology forever. His name was Bob Lazar. His story: reverse engineering alien spacecraft at a secret military installation called S4, located just 15 miles southwest of Area 51. On May 15, 1989, Lazar sat before a television camera in Las Vegas. He remained anonymous, face obscured, voice altered. What he revealed would ignite decades of debate. He described 9 extraterrestrial spacecraft, each hovering above hydraulic platforms inside a mountain hangar. He spoke of studying their propulsion systems, their materials, their impossible physics. Most intriguingly, Lazar claimed these craft ran on element 115, a super-heavy element that didn't exist in known periodic tables, an element that wouldn't be officially synthesized until 2003. He detailed anti-gravity propulsion, achieved by distorting space-time itself, a concept that aligned suspiciously with cutting-edge theoretical physics, yet remained decades ahead of public knowledge. The technical sophistication of Lazar's account stunned viewers. He spoke with precision about reactor chambers, gravity wave manipulation, and matter-antimatter reactions, details that seemed neither fabricated nor pedestrian. But within weeks, the narrative fractured. Investigators questioned his credentials. MIT and Caltech had no records of a Bob Lazar. The physics community remained skeptical, dismissive, silent. Yet here lay the paradox. Lazar's scientific claims, while unverified, contained details consistent with actual classified research conducted decades later. How could he have known? Skeptics produced conventional explanations. Lazar had studied legitimate physics papers, extrapolated technobabble, crafted an elaborate hoax to escape a troubled past. His background, they noted, was murky. Others pointed to his employment history, claimed positions at Los Alamos, MIT, and Area 51, institutions that denied ever hiring him. The doubts multiplied. The establishment closed ranks. Yet Lazar's 1989 testimony persisted, shared across underground networks, bootleg videos, and early internet forums. Area 51 transformed overnight from abstract legend into specific, tangible destination. Thousands began trekking to Rachel, Nevada, seeking proof. Desert highways filled with curiosity seekers. The extraterrestrial highway became pilgrimage route. S4 became obsession. One man had weaponized mystery itself. Whether hoaxer or whistleblower, Lazar achieved something unprecedented. He democratized alien mythology. Area 51 ceased being classified whisper and became cultural monument. His claims remained unverified. His credentials remained suspect. His evidence remained circumstantial. Yet the question persisted. Why would an unemployable electrician risk everything for elaborate fiction? Element 115 posed its own puzzle. In 2003, scientists synthesized moscovium. In 2016, it received official recognition. The element Lazar, described in 1989, became real. 14 years later, without explanation of his foreknowledge, the US government has never confirmed or denied Lazar's claims. No documents were released, no statements issued, only silence, the most eloquent answer of all. In 2019, the US Navy officially acknowledged that UFO videos documented by military pilots showed phenomena that defied conventional explanation. 30 years after Lazar spoke, the conversation shifted, yet Lazar himself remained unchanged, still living in Nevada, still defending his testimony, still refusing to disappear. Martyr, charlatan, or messenger, the choice belonged to history. His legacy proved undeniable. Bob Lazar transformed alien contact from fringe mythology into mainstream discourse. Area 51 transcended secrecy. The birth of a legend became birth of a movement. For 60 years, the United States government denied Area 51 existed. Then, in 2013, everything changed. A single document, declassified, redacted, but unmistakable in its admission. The base was real, and the government had been lying. The CIA's own history, titled the Central Intelligence Agency and Overhead Reconnaissance, finally acknowledged what thousands of witnesses had claimed for decades. Historian Jeffrey Richardson obtained the document through the Freedom of Information Act. The admission was buried in footnotes, but it was there. Area 51 existed. But the real story wasn't what they tested there. It was why they had to finally admit it existed. Environmental lawsuits, sick workers, legal pressure that decades of denial could no longer withstand. Throughout the 1990s, workers at Area 51 began filing claims, illnesses, birth defects, cancers. They demanded answers about what they had been exposed to during decades of classified work. One former employee, a man named Robert Lazar, had documented health problems after working at the base. He sued the Air Force. The government fought back with absolute secrecy claims. Federal Judge Philip Pro ruled in 1998. The government could not hide behind classification to deny workers compensation for injuries they sustained. The truth had legal value. More cases followed. Workers claimed exposure to hazardous materials during testing of advanced aircraft and experimental weapon systems. The veil was cracking. Then came the real revelation. What had actually been tested at Area 51 was not extraterrestrial technology. It was Soviet aircraft. Captured, studied, reverse-engineered. The CIA document revealed operations codenamed OCART and Have Donut. American pilots had secretly flown Soviet MiG aircraft at Area 51 to test their capabilities against American defenses. This explained some sightings, unusual aircraft, strange shapes in the sky, test pilots pushing experimental jets to their limits. But the government could never explain this publicly during the Cold War. The F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter was developed and tested at Area 51. Its angular, impossible-looking shape sparked UFO reports for decades. Citizens saw something unprecedented. In 1988, the existence of the F-117 was finally acknowledged publicly. But for years before that, Area 51 employees and nearby residents reported seeing it in test flights. The declassification also revealed testing of the A-12 OCART, the CIA's supersonic spy aircraft. Its delta-wing silhouette was unlike anything civilians had ever witnessed. Misidentifications were inevitable. The government had maintained absolute denial, not to protect humanity from alien truth, but to maintain operational security during the most intense period of Cold War competition. Environmental contamination at Area 51 was real. Jet fuel, solvents, radioactive materials from weapons testing, all had accumulated on the base over decades of unregulated operations. Workers developed illnesses consistent with exposure to volatile organic compounds and heavy metals. The Air Force maintained they could not discuss the work because it was classified. In 2013, when the CIA finally declassified its history, it represented a victory for workers and researchers who had fought for transparency. The truth, delayed was finally arriving. The admission transformed the narrative. Area 51 was not about extraterrestrials. It was about American technological dominance, Cold War secrecy, and the human cost of national security. Declassified documents revealed that unidentified flying object reports had actually been sightings of classified aircraft. The government had fostered UFO speculation to mask military development. This was, in a sense, the ultimate conspiracy. Not an extraterrestrial cover-up, but a deliberate conflation of legitimate UFO reports with classified aircraft programs to maintain secrecy. The 2013 declassification marked a turning point. Researchers finally had official documentation of what many had suspected. Area 51 was not hidden because it housed aliens. It was hidden because it represented the most advanced military technology in the world, developed through methods and resources the public could not be allowed to know. The government's admission came 60 years too late for some. Workers who had suffered health consequences had already passed away. The truth arrived as a partial vindication, yet the declassification raised new questions. How much remained classified? What other programs had been hidden under the umbrella of Area 51 secrecy? The truth, it seemed, was still incomplete. What had begun as UFO reports in the 1950s had evolved into a complex story about Cold War competition, technological innovation, environmental harm, and the price of national security. The mystery of Area 51 was finally solved, not with revelations of extraterrestrial contact, but with documents proving that American secrecy itself had been the greatest mystery of all. Secrecy is not merely the absence of truth. It is an architecture, a deliberate construction designed to obscure, deflect, and control narrative itself. From 1947 forward, the machinery of concealment operated on a single principle: compartmentalization. Information divided into fragments, each fragment isolated, each holder bound by secrecy oaths. No single person knew the complete truth. Scientists understood their fragment. Military officers understood theirs. Politicians received carefully curated briefings. This wasn't incompetence. It was strategy. When the Roswell debris arrived at Wright Field and later Area 51, the immediate response was classification. Not discussion, not investigation by external parties. Lock it away. Deny its existence, control who knew what and when. The genius of compartmentalization lay in its self-reinforcing nature. If you asked a low-level official, they could honestly say they knew nothing. If you asked a general, national security became the answer. By the 1950s, a secondary mechanism emerged: disinformation. The government did not simply deny Roswell, they actively redirected public attention toward weather balloons, then toward psychological warfare explanations. Each denial created new questions. Each explanation contradicted the last. And in that vacuum of truth, something unexpected flourished. Public imagination began constructing its own narrative. Extraterrestrial visitors filled the void. The psychological mathematics were simple. The public would rather believe in aliens than in their own government's deception. Aliens were less threatening than acknowledging official betrayal of trust. Area 51 became the physical embodiment of this strategy. Remote, officially non-existent, ringed by security fences and armed guards. What happened there was nobody's business. The public imagination could only speculate. Throughout the Cold War, plausible deniability became doctrine. Officials could testify truthfully about their own knowledge while remaining ignorant of the larger picture. The system was designed to produce contradictions. When documents eventually surfaced decades later, they revealed the machinery of concealment in action. Memos instructing field officers to deny all knowledge, orders to classify everything for national security. The machine documented itself, but the strategy carried consequences. Every denial reinforced public suspicion. Every contradiction deepened distrust. By the 1960s, the government's credibility on extraterrestrial matters had been fundamentally damaged by its own actions. Ironically, the classification itself became evidence. Why would genuine weather balloon experiments require decades of secrecy? Why would test flights demand Area 51? The cover-up became more suspicious than any actual event. The psychological impact endured. An entire generation grew up understanding that official narratives could not be trusted, that government institutions prioritized secrecy over transparency, that the truth existed somewhere behind classified walls. Roswell and Area 51 became symbolic of something larger, the machinery of state secrecy operating in the modern age. Two locations, one continuous strategy, decades of consequences still unfolding. The compartmentalization persists today. Documents remain classified. Officials retire without ever speaking publicly. The mechanisms of secrecy continue functioning, now perfected by 70 years of practice. And the public? Still wondering, still questioning, still unable to distinguish between genuine mystery and deliberate obfuscation. The cover-up's greatest success was not what it concealed. It was the permanent doubt it created. For 75 years, Area 51 remained locked behind barbed wire and classified silence. But in 2019, something unexpected happened. A meme went viral, a joke. Over 2 million people signed up online to storm the base and see the aliens themselves. What began as internet satire revealed something profound. Area 51's mystique had transcended generations. The legend lived on. But then, in December 2017, the New York Times published a story that changed everything. The Pentagon had investigated UFOs. Officially, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program had spent $22 million studying unidentified flying objects. Luis Elizondo, a former Pentagon official, stepped forward with classified video evidence. 3 videos emerged from Navy pilots' gun camera footage. Objects moving at impossible speeds, defying known physics. The Pentagon confirmed their authenticity. In May 2021, Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, released an official report. The government could not explain 94% of reported incidents. The admission was stunning. 2 years later, in July 2023, Congress held public hearings. Former intelligence officers testified under oath about recovered non-human biologics and intact craft. David Grush, an Air Force intelligence officer, detailed what he called a multi-decade UAP retrieval program. Entities, he said, were not from this planet. The Department of Defense neither confirmed nor denied his claims, but they did not dismiss them. Official silence had transformed into official acknowledgement. What Area 51 had guarded for decades was no longer purely a whispered legend. The government's own agencies had validated the core mystery. But here emerges the defining paradox of our age. We now have official confirmation of the unexplained, yet answers remain elusive. The government admits something extraordinary exists. It cannot explain it, but simultaneously refuses full transparency about what it knows. Declassified documents reveal the truth. Institutional secrecy itself became the story. Whether or not extraterrestrials ever landed here, the cover-up was devastatingly real. Decades of denial, decades of ridicule for those who questioned, decades of a government institution choosing silence over truth. The lesson is not whether aliens visited Nevada. The lesson is what we learnt about ourselves, our capacity for institutional deception, and our hunger for answers. Area 51 exists now, in a strange liminal space, half classified, half disclosed, half mystery, half institutional admission. The generations that grew up with whispered theories now hear those theories echoed in official government testimony. Vindication arrived, but so did new questions. If the Pentagon could hide this for 75 years, what else remains classified? What other truths wait behind locked doors? Area 51 taught us that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Neither is the absence of truth in public records. The real mystery may not be whether we are alone in the universe, It may be whether we can ever trust our institutions to tell us what they truly know.